Morning. Welcome to another episode of GODSPLAY. Hope you watched the previous episodes. Today we're on episode 3 or 4, I think. I'm not quite sure. I suppose I have to look, but you can have a look. If you haven't watched it, it doesn't really matter, does it? Last time, if you did watch, you'll remember we were discussing the ancient gods of ancient civilizations, most notably the Sumerians and Anunnaki, and the descendants of the Anunnaki, and basically that I was suggesting that these weren't gods at all, and they were not ancient aliens from another star or another solar system or another galaxy. I feel it would just be a hell of a lot too far to travel, and the time parameters would be ridiculous. They'd be completely insane. I mean, the things would have to live for a very long time, even longer than the Anunnaki. Well, 1,000 years you could travel quite fast. But anyway, my feeling is, why would it be necessary? I mean, if we have a look at the length of the age of the Earth, and I'll just summarize just quickly, is that we've been around for 4.5 billion years. There's been life on Earth for 3.5 billion years. A mass extinction event took out the dinosaurs 66 million years ago and made plenty of room for mammals, because mammals at the time when the asteroids were blossomed by that asteroid, the mammals, obviously they're smaller, they could climb underground, they could hide, and they could get away and all kinds of shit, and survive, and eventually breed, and they gave rise to us, according to Darwin and other such theories. To humanity, which actually appeared on the thing, according to those kind of timelines, 300,000 years odd again. The hominids started walking upright. But we also know that there are artifacts discovered 3 and 6 million years ago. So unless muskrats and bloody, what are those little things, meerkats were hunting with spears and stuff and making fires, there's something very, very wrong with that timeline and the whole rollout of the understanding of the rollout of humanity. So let's go through this. We know that we had hunter-gatherers about 10,000 years ago, right, 12,000 years ago. We have hypothesis or very, very strong evidence that another comet or asteroid hit Greenland 12,000 years ago, which pushed, even though the Earth was coming out of an ice age, it dropped us right into an ice age again, to glacial minimum temperatures, and eliminated a pretty large chunk of life and probably a lot of humanity. But before that period, we know that there was technology, high technology, sophisticated technology, which is the paradigm, which is a little bit of the paradox, should I say, and that we had. How can they have if we were hunter-gatherers a couple of thousand years later? And then, of course, this goes back to Mount Toba eruption in 70,000, and so we go back. And as we go back into history, obviously it becomes harder and harder to find artifacts. The Earth's crust has been blossomed and moved in all kinds of ways. And so we won't find artifacts. I mean, let's think about the 6 million year old artifacts that have been found. If you found human bones 6 million years old, the chances are it would resemble talcum powder mixed with bloody sand and stuff. So the chance of finding human artifacts of these kind of fossil remains at that kind of distance into the past become unrealistic. So we come back to this feeling of who were the ancient deities, and starting first of all Anu and from the Sumerians, and then of course when we're going to have a look at ancient Egypt before Zeb-Tepi, before all of the dynasties, we find out that their legends and fables or whatever and religion were almost identical to the Sumerians. The same thing of gods and hierarchy of gods, and the pantheon had a lot of gods. And if you look at all the gods in these pantheons, and going on later to the Greeks and Romans, they look more like governments, don't they? They look like administrative teams. God of war, God of famine, God of health, God of what, you name it. It's like that bloody government. And if you look how these deities were actually worshipped, they did. Each deity became the almost the deity of a city-state. And they were adored in the city-state. So the people were harnessed to actually serve and worship these deities through a high priest or high priestess in this administrative structure. Well, now, if people did survive the younger dryas and the whole cataclysm and the mass extinction event, if there were some people that were very sophisticated and they brought their sophistication through and hunter-gatherers found them, wouldn't they possibly be seen as gods, as deities? And would they not have actually almost reinforced the belief because of the power that it could bring them? And if this has gone back into history, that we have come, we've risen, and then there's been an extinction event, and we've risen again, extinction event, and risen again. We could have gone through multiple civilizations in the last million years, and we wouldn't have a clue. Only some of the artifacts and sort of some kind of references to sky alignments, star alignments, earth alignments, and high sophisticated mathematics, which is a language on its own. And those provide the hints, and the hints, I believe, were actually itemized or documented to provide a future for sophisticated race or human society, and let them have a look, pick up all of the incongruences and the strange information, dig deeper, and then maybe find out what happened to these people and find out more about their civilizations. And I think that's where we are now. The last 50 to 100 years, we've uncovered a hell of a lot archaeologically and through science. And it is shifting or influencing the shift of understanding of where we came from and how we got here. But now let's go into the subject of God. Okay? So let's first define what God is, what a God is, this God is. And I think it comes down to language and understanding to start with. If I say, look at that spoon, you immediately will create a picture in your head of the spoon, a spoon. It still won't have color, it won't have material yet, and it won't have dimension. But you will have a vague idea in your mind, and my mind will both be thinking about the same basic implement. Now, if I do start adding color, the red spoon, the red aluminium spoon, the heavy red aluminium spoon, the big motherfucker heavy red aluminium spoon, and so we go on, and it's getting closer to the descriptor of the spoon, and it becomes more easier for you to understand what I'm talking about. And this was the development of language, wasn't it? It was a means to communicate so that other people understand what other people are talking about. So now we go into God. When I say the word God, there is a picture in your mind, whoever you are, of God. You immediately come, boom, and you put your own picture. Christians immediately think of Christ on the cross and this kind of thing, maybe the birth and all of the things, but basically around Christ and God sitting in a cloud, somewhere looking down on his son in whom he is well pleased. Jews, Arabs, well, the Jews turned around and said you cannot describe God, which I think is pretty close to the actual reality anyway. But they said you cannot name and you cannot describe Yahweh. And that's there. So in other words, you have conversations with Jewish people about God and afterlife. It becomes very complex. And I'm not really quite sure, actually, on what a Jewish person thinks. I know they believe in Jehovah and one God, but and they have also given human characteristics to the God. And Islam, as a derivative of Judaism, has very similar, a couple of notable diversions, and he's a much stricter God, but very, very similar in the story. And I think this goes to all religions. And then I think it's pretty obvious that this would be the case, because the axial of religion, of theology, the period that there has been religion on earth is only 5,000 years. So before 5,000 years ago, we didn't know about any kind of religion. 6,000 years BC, quite honestly, say 7,000 years ago. There was no understanding of religion. There was a feeling of consciousness of mortality for about 30,000 years because people started burying their deads and doing rituals and all kinds of nonsense. So there is a feeling that there was an understanding of mortality and that forces bigger than humanity at play. But the formalities of religion came about 7,000 years ago. So now, would that have any impact on the existence or not of God? How long human beings have believed in a creator or a divine savior, or whatever we want to call it? It wouldn't, would it? I mean, hello, the universe has been around for 13.8 billion years. And was it just rocking in free fall, and then 5,000 years, whoa, God arrived and said, hey, well, let's just do some modifications, and off we went, and we had this whole bloody hoo-ha on religion. Oops, fuck. Okay, so did we, up to about, there was free for all, or nothing, just this big piece of rock and energy floating about in space. And then all of a sudden, 5,000 years ago, boom, hello, God. And God went, and he woke up and he came and saw. And that was the beginning of religion, which is the true belief in God. When I started my studying, I went in the opposite direction. I said, okay, we became aware or conscious or believed in a creator, a God, a superpower about 5,000 years ago. But the relevance or the discussion of whether God exists or not, I think should look further. We need to look right back to creation, right back to the beginning, 13.8 billion years ago, Big Bang. And the thought there would be to say two thoughts. First of all, is this really a beginning? And 1 second before the Big Bang, what was the state of the universe? And 10 seconds, and a year, and 100 years. And we hear, according to a lot of theories which are now being sort of questioned, is that at the zero, at the Big Bang, time did not exist. It could not exist physically, from physics. But logic obviously tells us to question this. And a lot of beliefs, new theories are coming out in physics, that the cycle of the Big Bang would have gone over and over and over. Boom, explodes out, goes out, things move out, then contract in again through forces of gravitation, they compress, infinitesimally, boom, they explode out again. And that seems to, which is the logical first thought anyway, is that one would assume that, boom, comes out, there's no conservation of energy and mass, goes out and goes back, and this whole thing goes backwards and forwards. But the question, so in other words, the time element I think is important. I cannot see that time is not infinite. And then the second thing is, at the actual Big Bang, was it just a random moment in time and just a random event, or was it an action brought about or influenced by some form of consciousness? Did the universe have a consciousness that turned around and said, okay, right, now we are going to change state, change look, and create a new universe? Was it a conscious effort? And that brings up the argument of what is consciousness. Okay? So we sit and we think, okay, well, hold on, how can it's all inanimate? It's a big bloody universe with big stars and planets, a mood of a fucking place. So how can it be? What's the consciousness doing? Is it like a guy in a control station moving little buttons or something? Is it a boom, let there be earth? Is it that kind of consciousness? Or are we simply transposing our understanding of human consciousness on the creator or a divine instigator? Thinking about it further, we know we've looked at, science is going both ways, isn't it? It's going bigger and bigger, and we can see further and further out, and we can see smaller and smaller inside. And now we even hear that they say they found the boson, the God's particle. And we're talking about zero-point gravity, and we're talking about massive things which are smaller and smaller to define matter. And we know that matter is made out of atoms and molecules and molecules and more molecules, and molecules are made out of matter, and matter is made out of protons and neutrons, electrons, and small quarks, and you name it. It just gets smaller and smaller. And the overlying principle is that 99% of the volume of of any piece of matter is space. So as I'm sitting here, 99% of me is space, complete space. and yet I'm a live, animate body. But how is my consciousness working? Well, I've got my brain, we all know that, and little electrons and bombing each other, little electrical shocks, and all these little things are going muller in my head here. And they give me thought and consciousness and the ability to make this video, or to think that I'm making it, and to discern, to think and make selections and right and wrong and all of these kind of things. So we have got little electrical shocks in our brains that are translating into our consciousness and letting me understand or appreciate the smell of a rose. Now think of that. Rose, smell, and electrons are letting you sense that. The same, right and wrong, every single thing. So is it any more unrealistic to say a universe could have a consciousness than our little grey sludge and sloth in my head, this mush that I wouldn't even eat, can derive thought, can express opinion, can discern what it perceives to be right and wrong, and learn and grow. And we think that from this grey with a couple of electrical shocks. I think it is narrow-minded to say we can believe in things that we can only see. And I believe if you have a look, first of all, of the start, origin of the universe, but then more specifically, the evolution of humankind, or life first and then humankind. That boom, first Big Bang, off it goes. Milky Way, a whole lot of molecular gas shoots up all over the place, into the universe. So the molecular gas cools, boom, forms into galaxies. Galaxies form into stars and planets and stuff. The Earth was formed. Our solar system was formed. The Earth was formed. Earth was in the wrong place. It was outside between Jupiter and Mars. Bang, gets hit by another planet, Theia, which moves it into a place, into the Goldilocks belt, where it can support water. Two thoughts on water: either it was created at the origination of the planet, or when the star exploded in the first place, or it was brought by comets. Either way, may fuck. Very, very, what a nice coincidence, considering we need water for life, and we need water at a temperature that it is in liquid form to sustain or to nurture life. So now between Mars and Venus, where it got knocked to, Goldilocks belt, stunning. So here we are sitting here, place where water, another comet comes, brings life, well, it brings amino acids and building blocks of life, lands in the places where the water can actually interact with it and creates life over millions and billions of years. Yeah, God has got no time limit, remember that. So it forms this life. The life is wrong, it's still sludge and mush, so mass extinction event, another one. Eventually mammals come, mammals go up, humanity comes, we're not quite sure where in the human chain, and from life, because so many stories and so many hypotheses. But be that as it may, we get here eventually. And we here, and I'm now making a video. Those coincidences of creation in the immensity of space are bizarre. The probabilities are just ridiculous. Absolute. Everything about that we know about creation is ridiculous. And we're running around here doing DNA experiments and all kinds of things. But we still cannot spark life. So there are things that are way beyond our comprehension. We will never understand them because we are not God. And then people say, yeah, but God is within each of us. We'll come to that. Okay, so now we say, okay, was there a consciousness at the beginning, right at the beginning? And my belief, believe what you like, quite honestly. But my belief, yes, there was. I don't think it was a random event. I don't think the universe was a random event. I think it's left pretty much its own flow, like when you bust on a pool table and the ball's scattered, but there was a purpose in mind. So, okay, so we have the Big Bang. We've got a little minute, infinitesimal point in space. Okay, infinite volume. Bam! And it explodes into the fucking universe. So what was God doing? Was he like sitting on the sideline in his big seat and he was watching that little spot and he counting down? Okay, tick-tock, fuck, the watch is not working, time doesn't exist yet, but if I did have a watch, I'd be watching that spot and boom, the universe starts. Not really that convincing, is it? Doesn't get hold of me. I can't see this thing. I mean, first of all, what if nothing exists in the volume? What was he? Did he have volume? Did he have shape? Did he have size? Did he have a long beard? What was the story? And it's just unlikely. Was he speaking English? It is it can't bind. Turning around and saying buying into that is faith. It just doesn't work. So let's look further. And we look at the universe in a little bit more again. And we know that the universe, the matter in the universe, is made out of matter that we can see and dark matter. Now, dark matter was defined as exerting a force on the outside extreme stars in galaxies and stopping them from blossoming out into the universe. It was a force which was being exhausted, force of attraction, and no one knew what the force was. How come? These stars should be mooring out at the speed they're actually rotating and revolving, and they're not. They're hanging around. Hey, we're here forever. And they call it dark matter. And with dark energy, the dark energy is the whole story of galaxies are accelerating out towards infinity. They're not maintaining a constant speed. Now, if that acceleration exists, then we know that there must be a force exerted on them. That force driving them out has been named dark energy. Now, dark matter makes up 85% of the universe. Dark energy makes up 90% of the energy of the universe. So most of the universe, as we know it from an energy perspective and a matter perspective, cannot be seen and can only be detected by the result and the force and the action it takes on the universe itself. Okay, so now let's go into a third one. We go into the neutrinos. Now, neutrinos are little things that get kicked out of the stars. Again, they fly all over. They play billions and billions, and they go through every single thing all the time. Trillions are passing through the planet, every single thing. So they are a lattice of connectivity between the world, if you really think about it. If you picture them and they were neon, they would probably form these three-dimensional lattice, which would be almost like a spatial kind of a configuration of where everything is in the universe. And the lines linking the universe, neutrinos, link the entire universe together. It is the collective, all right? So now let's think. We've got neutrinos, which is a collective, like a lattice of existence. We don't know the force, we don't know what they do, quite honestly, but they are there. I believe there's something to do with visualization and the actual orchestration of our will in the universe, which is seen as spiritual, but could almost be organic, quite honestly, but let's not go there yet. So we've got the neutrinos, we've got dark energy, dark matter, and this whole thing. And then we've got spirit. We say, okay, now we know all this stuff exists, but does this exist because of God? Did God create it? And do we have to live a good life? Is this divine? Is it a divinity? Was it a divine act? And what is divinity? What is divine? How do we define divine? Holy? What is holy? It's obeying religion, is it? Or is it finding out the reality and becoming enlightened in the universe and the ways of the universe and a creator if it exists?